Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we've got King's Rest. So taking a look at the initial route then. Well, if we're not shrouding this first bit, then we're going to have to kill these mobs, which means somebody's going to have to take care of these minions of Zol. Next, we'll have to clear the whole first boss room. Then obviously we'll have to do this, little antechamber event and have to kill all these here. Next, we have the Void Emissary on the bridge. Now, I personally don't mind this. It makes killing this mob even more valuable because at least you can cleave these two packs down together. Also, it means that if anybody dies, you've unlocked the spirit guide who will allow you to fly across and quickly get to this point in the bridge if anybody dies. Because remember, in King's Rest, if you die, you respawn at the very beginning of the dungeon up until you kill the third boss, which means you basically cleared everything in the dungeon just to unlock this new graveyard. So having this unlocked actually is a pretty good thing in my opinion. Next, you want to try and kill all of these little globules down. If you can do it in one pull, even better. It's going to save you a lot of time. The next pull I would do is both of these constructs at the same time. You can pull them over to one side of the dungeon, and it means you're only having one set of entombs. In the Dazar video I mentioned Green Mile. Maybe this could be 8 Mile. It is at this point in the dungeon in which you start to have actual choice in your route. Up until now, there have been Void Emissaries blocking our way the whole time. So, if we kill every single mob pack here, you'll notice that we actually end up going way, look, we're already at 103%. You can see in the counter up here. We're already way over percent. So clearly we don't want to kill every single pack here. Now you'll notice that most groups, if you've done King's Rest before, will probably shroud this area here, right? This mobs here. However, because of the Void Emissary, we're going to have trouble doing that. So, we're probably going to want to kill this, right? And probably kill these mobs in doing so. So, what we can do is we can make sure we're going to kill these mobs, and then we can pull, let's see, so at what point do we run out of trash? If we kill all this, probably kill this mob as well. However, if we do this route, it means we're going to have to shroud here, and then we're going to, after killing the third boss, pull these mobs away. Our tank is going to have to pull these mobs away and then die. And then he'll be res later on. We kill Zol, we end up being at 105% trash overall. So, how can we reduce this percentage even further? Well, potentially we could invis pot this first pack of mobs here, which I think would be a very good call. Or we can switch up our route entirely, and actually, we don't kill these mobs. And we leave these here. And we would kill this pack and this pack. So we would use our Rogue Shroud here, kill these remaining packs and watch out for this patrol. And then we would death skip here, kill the third boss, and then again death skip to this part of the dungeon. Now that involves using 2 battle reses, and is a big time sink because everybody has to die. In recent weeks, there has even been a new tactic in which you can skip the Shadow of Zol, which is quite a deadly mob, especially on fortified weeks, and instead incorporate a Demon Hunter who can make use of a type of exploit in which he will manage to pull the last boss and open the gate for the rest of the party without the Shadow of Zol being needed to pull. Although with this route, this means that you have to have a rogue in your group and you have to have a Demon Hunter in your group. Due to the addition of the seasonal affix of emissaries, which change every single week, I didn't want to take you through the dozen or so different routes that we can do, because it would literally be a 20-minute video of me just changing 1 or 2 mobs around, and I don't think that would be the best for each of you to learn from the dungeons. So when constructing the routes previously, I wanted to show you on what the current week affixes will be at the release of this video to help you the most. However, the recording I'm about to show is actually of early November, and the affixes associated with that week. These being Fortified, Bolstering, Skittish, and a Tides-heavy Emissary week. So when you first enter King's Rest, your main concern are going to be these little Voidling mobs. Now these can be easily handled with a Master Spell from a Priest, or if you're on Horde and you have a Blood Elf, you can use your Blood Elf racial to quickly just disperse all of these mobs. Do be careful though, because on bolstering weeks, which this week it was, if you have any other mob packs pulled with these Voidlings, then they will also get bolstered when the Voids die. Because we have this Void Emissary right at the beginning of the dungeon, we make sure to kill it down as quickly as possible, and then our tank pulls the remainder of these animated Guardians, and we cleave those all down together. The animated Guardians themselves don't really do anything, they're not really harmful in any way, except for this massive frontal cone that they do, which has a long cast time and can be interrupted by things like typhoons and any other knockbacks, Ring of Peace, for example. You just want to make sure as a tank that you position these mobs facing against the wall so that everyone else in your group can freely cleave these down. Now, because of how long it takes to clear the next room, and because it's a fortified week, we end up using Bloodlust on this first pack here, which makes it very good for our mob percent efficiency. Again, because this Void Emissary was here, we had to pull at least one of these Guardians, and if you're going to kill one of them, you may as well kill all of them, right? So then we get into the first boss room. Now you have to kill all of these mob packs in order to summon the first boss, so there's absolutely no way you can skip any of these mob packs here. Again, in this room, little Voidlings will also be spawned, and they will slowly move around the whole of the room. What you can do as a rogue player is you can stealth to the back of the room, wait until all of the mobs are summoned, and you can immediately Blood Elf racial all of these Voidlings and then just vanish. So the two mobs that this pack consists of are the Champion and the Witch Doctor. The Champion himself just needs the occasional soothe whenever he enrages, and the Witch Doctor just needs to have their spells interrupted, especially the Shadow Bolt Volley. Last we move on to the hardest pack in the room, which contains that Tide Emissary, which I just want to make sure that I'm keeping rooted. I've seen some tanks manage to pull this group without actually getting the Tide Emissary into combat by pulling this warrior furthest to the right. The first boss of this dungeon is all about maximizing your space efficiency, as well as on a tyrannical week, it's quite the DPS check. The boss itself has two main abilities. The first is the Serpentine Gust, which you just want to make sure you all move out of as a group. It's pretty self-explanatory. Next is the Spit Gold, and is the reason this boss is such a massive DPS check. And if any of these mobs actually reach the boss when they are summoned, then the boss gets a massive shield, and it's probably a wipe if even just one of these mobs reaches the boss. So as a tank, you want to make sure you're doing a good job of kiting the boss around the room, but not too quickly, or you'll run out of space. Now these mobs spawn in a random order, and you can only do these mob packs one at a time, which is again why I dislike this dungeon. If it was up to me, I'd like to pull multiple packs at once. So this first pack, you just have to watch out for the shadow walls that these little minions are doing. There's also a poison to be dispelled by your healer, though it's not the end of the world if it doesn't. Again, the next mob pack that spawns is a pack of 3, and there are a couple of abilities that you want to look out for here. The highest health mob, again the King, will use this Chain Lightning ability, which you want to make sure that you either use knockbacks such as Ring of Peace or Typhoon to deal with. Also, one of these smaller mobs will use a regeneration ability. You definitely want to make sure you look to interrupt that. Now, we ended up using our second Bloodlust here, which was probably for a good call, because we're not going to get Bloodlust again until the second boss room, and we know we're going to have to clear all of that trash anyway. This next mob pack is probably the most dangerous pack in the room, as the King Tamaji will use this Blade Storm ability. If you get hit once or twice, you might end up just dying. The other mob just needs to have the Shadow Bolt interrupted, and occasionally one of your allies will be mind controlled. However, this mind control can be quickly dispelled. The final mob pack in this room, again, can be quite scary. It features the Queen, who will use this shoot ability, which can hit very hard, especially on the higher fortified keys. And then the Raptor, which will intermittently jump to a player and use this hunting leap ability. So you just want to make sure you're either Typhoon it out, Ring of Peace. Watch out as well for these purple pools on the ground, because if you're standing in one and you get the hunting leap on you, that can end up being a very dangerous combination. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you kill this mob on the bridge, then that allows you to get access to the Bat Handler, who allows you to fly quickly back to the bridge in case of any deaths in the dungeon. This mob itself is not too dangerous really. All you need to watch out for is the Slam on the ground, which the tank can maneuver that and face it however he moves. And then you just want to look out for the Beam ability. As the tank, you're probably going to get hit by this, but the rest of your group should easily be able to just stand to one side and just move around in a probably a clockwise motion. Now I feel the best way to handle this second boss room is to pull all of these small globule mobs together in one pull, being very careful not to stand in the green swirlies on the floor or the green residue that is left behind, as this will apply a stacking poison debuff, which needs to quickly be dispelled. You would then want to pull the two constructs together. Now the way these constructs work, normally if you tank them in the middle of the room, they can have people entomb on both sides. However, if you tank them both on one side, both mobs will entomb each player into the same tomb, and it's always the same tomb. So it just makes it easy for your group to quickly know, right, it's always going to be this one, and they can just quickly click that. After that's all mopped up, we move on to the second boss. Again, this boss does similar abilities to the constructs with the entomb, so you want to quickly make sure that if anybody does get entombed, that you grab them out of there. Next is the Burn Corruption ability, which will target a specific player and then like laser beam a big fire patch on the ground, so you want to make sure that you quickly move out of that or you probably will be one shot. Occasionally the boss will put a debuff on a player which causes them to be heavily slowed. This means that you need to be quickly healed up by your healer, or you're probably not going to be able to move out of that fire in time. And lastly, the boss has a Drain Fluids ability. Now if this targets you, the best way to deal with it is just to pop a defensive and kind of just keep doing what you're doing. However, if you're a Night Elf, or a rogue, you can wait until this ability is cast on you, and then you can vanish it, Shadow Meld it. You might even be able to, again, use things like Feign Death, but I haven't tried it myself, but you could definitely check it out and see if that works. Now, most of this trash consists of a Hex Priest, which, as you can guess, casts Hex, and the Berserker. The Berserker is probably the scariest mob in this group here. The Priest just kind of needs to be interrupted on all the spell casts. However, the Berserker has two abilities that you want to be careful of. One of these is the leap, in which it will target a specific player and jump to them, so you want to make sure that you move out of that purple swirly on the ground, which is super easy to see, by the way. But what you really want to look out for is the Severing Blade, which will apply a debuff to the closest player to the Berserker, which ticks very heavy. You can see that I end up getting this on me here, and it just gets bopped off me by the Paladin. But if you do have this on you, you definitely want to pop a defensive. As a tank, you can probably take 2, maybe 3 stacks of this debuff, but you never want to have more than that. So try not to pull too many packs of Berserkers at a time. We then look to make use of the Shroud in this dungeon to save time on some of this trash. We end up making it through okay, however we die to the trash pack somehow. I'll also mention with these mobs that they do occasionally put down the healing totem. That definitely wants to be a focus of your DPS. Or as a tank, you just want to pull all of the mobs out of it completely. So unfortunately we do die to the pack and we have to stealth back through past the previously shrouded mob packs. But then it's business as usual. The next pack features the Beastmaster. Now this mob will use a Poison Barrage ability which will target a specific player, and if anybody else is caught in this barrage, they will also have a poison debuff applied to them. So you want to make sure that you're either positioning the mob so that no one else is standing with you, or move out of the poison barrage if you know it's targeted next to you, and quickly dispel the debuff. Beastmaster will also use a deadly shot, in which if it targets a specific player, it will smack them really far back, like really far back. So you want to make sure that if you're targeted, you position yourself up against a wall or a hard surface so that you can't get smacked into oblivion. We then incorporate a death skip across the remaining trash of this bridge as we're close to our full percentage. And that mob pack with an emissary there is not very nice to deal with, as you can't get any interrupts or stuns involved. So you can have a lot of severing blades and hexes. So the way this third boss works is that you have each of the 3 bosses spawn in any random order. Now this week we managed to be starting with the Axe Thrower. This is the scariest boss, I would say, of the 3. You want to make sure that as a tank, you're tanking her probably in the middle of the room. I've seen other people use tactics where they tank in like a corner of the room, but I don't think that works very well in my opinion. I think it's best to tank her in the middle of the room so that the axes are always in the same rhythm. You want to just make sure that as a group you all move out from the whirling axe swirly. If you haven't got it by this point in the game, any swirlies on the ground, always bad swirlies, move out of swirlies. And you want to continue to avoid these axes that are spinning out around the room. If any of you have played Mario Party, this is the minigame boss. Now this boss also does a Severing Blade type ability, similar to the Berserkers earlier in the dungeon. You just want to make sure that you're healing anybody that's had this applied to them. Next we have the Spellcaster boss. Now he has 2 main abilities that you want to look to interrupt. The major one is the Poison. If that goes off, it will apply a massive debuff to everybody in the group and you'll probably wipe, as it's incredibly difficult to heal through. The next is the Lightning Bolt, which isn't too much of a problem if it does go through, but again, it's more tank damage and your healer has to spot heal. This boss also summons a group of 4 totems around the room. The main one that you want to focus killing is the Explosive Totem. If this goes off, it will do a lot of damage, and anyone standing within the blast radius, again, will likely die. Welcome to Mythic Plus, where there's no room for mistakes. Enjoyable, isn't it? The next priority target is the Thundering Crash Totem, as anyone caught in this blast radius will be silenced. Luckily, we're a full melee group and a hunter, so who cares about the healer, right? The third totem I would prioritize is the Torrent Totem. This just spits out more swirlies around the map, and you just want to make sure that you don't stand in any of those. Easy to avoid, and not too threatening. And the last one is just the Earthwall Totem, which just puts a shield on the boss. So you want to make sure that you kill that so you can actually pump damage into the boss. The last of the 3 bosses is the Conqueror. Now, his major ability is a debilitating backhand, where he smacks your tank away and then places a debuff on him, like a Sunder Armor. so his next attacks will hit very heavy. So you want to make sure that as a tank you're kiting the boss around. Or what you can do is have a taunt swap. So if somebody else in your group has a taunt ability, they can move to the other side of the room and taunt and just deal with it that way. And the other ability, which is kind of cool, is the barrel through ability, in which the boss will target a specific player and look to, after a period, charge to them. So you want everyone in the group to stack in between that person getting charged and the boss to soak some of the damage. I don't actually know how that physically works, but in game realms it works perfectly. A cool trick with this is I have learned that as a demon hunter, you can blade dance this barrel through ability and stop the damage going through at all. So definitely something to practice there, or check out some YouTube videos on how that's done. We incorporate the tank pulling all of the mobs away from the rest of the group, allowing everybody to kind of funnel through, and then the tank dies and the mobs reset. Now Zol is the most difficult mob in the dungeon, and on fortified weeks can potentially wipe your group again. Your tank will constantly be getting these shadow barrages cast on him, so will require heavy dedicated healing. Also, the boss will spawn these pools of darkness around the room, and you want to make sure that somebody is standing in those to soak them, or as a group you all collectively move, it's something like 15 yards or so away from that swirly on the ground. This mob will also spawn little voidlings on the ground, which if they reach their target will cause them to be feared. And lastly is the Dark Revelation, in which that player that gets targeted has a limited window to move out of the rest of the group, and then an explosion will go off. All in all, it's not a very difficult, complex fight with Zol, it's just everything hurts. So it's probably a good idea to incorporate a Bloodlust if you have it available. Now a lot of demon hunters here are incorporating this new skip in which you can jump up one of these columns, one of these pillars here, and I think it works by jumping on the fire pit, and then you have to like jump up onto the side of this pillar, and then you would rappel yourself backwards and jump over the gate of the boss room. And this would allow you to engage in the boss fight starting the event, which opens up the gates. Now this last boss, I've only ever seen people wipe to it maybe once or twice. It's pretty much if you get to this boss, the dungeon is completed in time. So how do we deal with this boss? Well, the boss will put down little tornadoes occasionally, so you just want to make sure that you're watching out for these and moving out of them. He will also do a blade combo in which he does furious attacks at your tank, so you just want to make sure that you're spot healing at this point. And then he will summon 2 raptors throughout the fight. The first raptor, you want to make sure that you focus as quickly as possible. This is just like any other raptor in the dungeon. Meanwhile, the boss will periodically target specific players and look to leap to them. This dungeon's all about jumping and clawing, okay? Jumping, clawing, and swirling. So you just want to make sure that you move out from the rest of the group. Now at around like 55-60% or so, the boss will summon Dazar. Now this raptor also needs to be focused hard, and again, if you do have Bloodlust available, then I would use it on this mob, depending on where your Bloodlusts have fallen in this dungeon. This mob will periodically cast a fear. The last ability, I promise you there's no more abilities after this, okay, is summon swirlies. Yes, would you believe it? It's a new mechanic, we've never seen it before, so what do? Standard them. Anyway, collect your loot up nicely. You deserve it, eh? I hope you enjoyed this dungeon walkthrough this week, and make sure you look out for the top tip in a second. For this week's top tip, I want to suggest to you another external website. This one's called Best Keystones, which I will link in the description. Now, it's a fairly self-explanatory website, and it just basically displays the different success rates of each dungeon, as well as a whole host of other information that you can go and kind of peruse if you're up for it. So let's say you've had a busy week at work and you're getting ready to blast a weekend of Mythic Plus, right? And you're going to be playing with a lot of pug groups. Well, you want to ensure that you're going to have the best success rate possible for each of those dungeons. So using this website, you can see so far this week, these dungeons have had, best possible chance of being completed in time. Therefore, I'm going to specifically target, these top 3 dungeons. So for this week, that would be Waycrest, Mana, Freehold, and the Underrock. However, this is in the past now, so unless you have a time machine and want to use all of that power on improving your Mythic Plus score instead of, preventing wars or something, then unfortunately you're just going to have to wait another 12 weeks for this to come back around again. Now, there are also some really cool additional pieces of information. If you look at the top little bits, the top little tabs on the page. So for example, the classes page. Here you can look at the different roles, so the tanks, healers, and DPS, and look at the different success rates, as well as the different level of average score that each class and role is doing. So let's say you have one of each tank, because you're just addicted to being flamed by the rest of your group for any slight mistake that you might make, well then you can use this website to say, okay, so which tank has got the best success rate? But not only that, you then want to look at the different average score. So a score, you can see Monk this week has a score of about 170 or so. That's equivalent to, I believe, a plus 16 in time, or about a plus 17 depleted, somewhere in that region. And that's on average, of course. However, if you compare that average to the rest of the tanks, you'll see Monk is performing very, very well this week, as it does every week. Would you believe it? However, if you look at all of the other tanks, you might go, oh, well, it's either Monk, Tank, or Warrior. But if you look, even Demon Hunter, Guardian, Druid, DK, they're all performing very well and in a very similar range. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video this week. I look forward to your comments, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care.